And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 197th edition of Assembly Call Radio, and it's our 657th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, December 10th, 2020. I'm your host, the coach, Brian Tonsoni. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
And Indiana is the national champion.
When it comes down, Indiana will be champion.
Martin takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
This evening's banner moment occurred last night after the disappointing loss to Florida State in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, when Trayce Jackson-Davis was interviewed and had quite a few things to say. And I quote Trayce, "I was really mad because I don't think any of us other IU teams we've had in the past 10 years, I don't want us to think of us as any other IU team in the past 10 years. We're trying to be different this season, and to be different, we have to win these games. I kind of was mad. At the end of the day, it's all love, but that's that." You never enjoy losses, and moral victories are okay, but you're really in this to win the game. And I like seeing that from your best player. A couple things from a coach's perspective. When your best player is your hardest worker and your best leader, your team has a chance to achieve more than they possibly can. A player-led team is a lot better than a coach-led team inside the locker room. That allows the coach to focus on strategy, skill development, and other things that coaches need to do. Trayce Jackson-Davis had a bad game against Texas, and he was, quote, lit up. When asked about who lit him up, he said, "My teammates got into me. They tell me they needed me." It was all about his teammates lifting them up. The combination of those two post-game comments show that this team is focused and is together. Yes, we'll talk about guard play. Yes, we'll talk about the lack of rebounding and also the lack of shooting on today's show. But what it shows me is that this team is bought in to what they're trying to achieve. They're playing together. They're responsible. And when you have teams that are like that, they may overcome some of those deficiencies and win more games than they should and make all of us happy to be Indiana Hoosier basketball fans again. This team is closer to the Indiana teams that we're used to having. Fix some of those errors, but the team foundation is there with that kind of attitude from your leader. Okay, now let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left,
You'll have fun.
Fun.
The Hoosiers make the tourney again.
Fun.
The Hoosiers make the tourney. Have
Fun.
The Hoosiers make the tourney again.
Fun.
The Hoosiers, yes, they'll have
Fun.
The Hoosiers make the tourney again.
and to my right, to my left, sorry, read the script, Mr. Tonsoni. Andy, what's your bottoms line on last night's loss to Florida State?
Like you said, there's a lot that you can look back on and lament. And in any time you got a one possession game that goes to overtime, you go pick out all kinds of small plays that might have made the difference in the game. But I think after the year we've all had, the week that way things have kind of gone for me, I'm trying to be optimistic about it. And I think you see a team that faced a really tough challenge from a physical standpoint, the way that Florida State guards, the way that they play, the personnel that they have. Presented a challenge similar to what you saw with IU in Texas, and IU really wilted in the Texas game, and you didn't see that against Florida State. And so there were a lot of chances to win the game down the stretch. I think there were plays that, as you look back, I went back and rewatched the last few minutes of regulation and the overtime period, and you can watch a lot of plays there and be like, man, just one play here or there can make the difference. But I thought it showed pretty good growth from a relatively young team over the course of, a week and a half, really that they've had from that Texas game. So I'm choosing to look at it that way. I know we'll talk about, like you said, all the areas that we want to see this team improve and how they schematically can maybe mask some of the deficiencies of the team. But I was proud of the way that they responded. And I think as you project that growth forward over the course of the season, I would like to think that bodes well. And you're, a shot away here or there from beating a really good team on the road. Obviously road games this year aren't quite the same as road games in a normal year, but I was overall impressed with what was there, and certainly frustrated that they couldn't find a way to get the win. And Anybody in my family that was around me during the late part of the game would know that I was frustrated with pieces of it. But when you take a step back, I think you can find a lot of positives from the way they approach the game. And ultimately, as we were talking about before we came on, just started to run out of gas a little bit at the end based on the shorter rotation and how long guys had played at that point. But overall, I think a positive step from where they were a week ago against Texas. So I'm going to focus on looking at it that way.
And to my right, he is the man taking Indiana basketball Twitter by storm with his IU Film Room series, which you can watch at iufilmroom.com. He founded Basketball Tools, an online resource for basketball coaches, and he is a former assistant coach at Southport and for Indiana Elite. He is Tony Adragna, a.k.a. Coach Adragna. Tony, welcome to the Assembly Call. What are your opening thoughts after Indiana's performance last night?
Yeah, first and foremost, just want to say thanks so much for having me on. Was really excited when Jared reached out about me coming on tonight. So first and foremost, just want to say thank you so much for this. I'm excited to talk IU basketball at any point in time, but certainly excited for this Coach's Corner tonight. For my opening thoughts on Indiana basketball, very much like Andy's thoughts. After watching the game for my film review, I'm actually not as discouraged as I was last night when I was watching live. I was actually texting with some buddies. I was getting frustrated with some of the spacing issues that I saw. But after I watched it today in a much more calm manner and kind of looking at it with a critical eye, I actually came away impressed with a lot of things that I saw. I actually saw some really encouraging things from the Hoosiers offensively without giving too much away from what we're going to talk about later on, but I saw a lot of really good things from the Hoosiers offensively that we haven't seen in the Archie era, and I'll leave it at that for my opening thoughts. But overall, as Andy said, a step forward certainly from Texas last week, and I think we're starting to kind of see what Indiana's identity is going to be this season, whether that's good or bad.
What's interesting, and you know this about film study too, is when you're wrapped up in the game and you're making subs and even as fans we're watching to go on a post game show, you're taking notes and all that. Film always shows the truth the next day when you slow it down and you have a cup of coffee and you can watch the film. I usually in our high school games find a player or a segment of time that I thought was pretty bad that was probably positive, and other times when I thought guys were good, oh my gosh, they were out of position. So the film doesn't lie. Yeah, I thought that Indiana had a lot of opportunities to win the game last night, and they didn't. In that is disappointing. The fact that against Florida State, who is a top team in the ACC, yes, they lost some players to the NBA draft, but they were big, long, and Leonard Hamilton does a great job and has been established there for a while. To go on the road in that environment and to compete is a positive. And again, you fix some of the things, the loose balls, some of those turnovers that led to, or bad shots that led to layups, and you have a maybe 6 to 10 point victory. And so again, moral victories aren't what Indiana's about, but there are some positives of where Indiana is. And when you look at the whole scope of NCAA basketball right now, Indiana's played 4 quality opponents, and not a lot of teams have played that. Some of it because of the COVID and others just because of scheduling. So here's what we're going to talk about this week. We're going to talk more about Indiana's loss to at Florida State and the Big Ten ACC Challenge, and we're going to have an extensive session of Coach's Corner. A lot of people sent in coaching-related questions about this IU team, and the three of us, we're going to try to answer that as in-depth as we can. All of that coming up this week on Assembly Call Radio. But before we get to all that, let's talk about our new sponsor this season, Superior Insulation, a.k.a. Superior Insulators. The first thing you need to know about them, as with almost all of our sponsors, is that they are diehard Hoosiers. Brad, the owner of Superior Insulation, is an IU fan and longtime Assembly Call listener. The second thing you need to know about Super Insulation is that they will literally make your life more comfortable by helping you fix drafty rooms, cold floors, and even excess noise. Plus, their systems help you save money with lower utility bills. More comfort and cost savings. It's not quite that double-double that Trayce Jackson Davis delivered against Florida State last night, but it is close. And with the winter here and colder temperatures still to come, now is the perfect time to invite Brad and his team out to your home or business so that they can do for you what they did for IU. Yes, Superior Insulators did all the air barrier systems and spray foam for the new IU Excellence Academy. Brad and his team also worked on the new football locker room, marching 100 Hall, and many other buildings on campus. Like I said, they're Hoosiers through and through, and damn good at what they do. Another longtime listener, Rick, reached out last week and told me he booked a consultation with Superior Insulation, and you should too. Because check this out. They have a special offer for Assembly Call listeners. You will get a $50 Home Field Apparel gift card when you call and schedule an appointment in a qualifying area. And Superior Insulators have 4 locations covering roughly the southern 2/3 of Indiana, plus the northern part of Kentucky. Just tell them Assembly Call sent you to get your gift card. So visit insulators.com or just Google Superior Insulation to learn more and schedule your appointment. Then Brad and his team can come help you create a healthier, quieter, and more energy-efficient home. That's insulators.com, INSEALATORS.com to learn more and to tell them the Assembly Call sent you to get your $50 Home Field Apparel gift card. So the Hoosier headlines we're talking about again today is IU Florida State and the Big Ten winning the Big Ten ACC challenge. Andy, again, going back, the key parts of last night from your aspect that may have kept Indiana in the game, or if you want to take an aspect that kind of cost Indiana an opportunity to win last night.
Yeah, I think there were a couple that stood out to me where they had chances to push the lead up to a 2-possession game, because really throughout the last I'm not even sure how many minutes it was within a 1-possession game either way. But I went back as I look back through to see how much did Trace actually touch the ball down the stretch. And so there was a play. They had that lob that Al made from close to midcourt, lobbed it for a dunk to TJD. And from that point forward, he touched the ball 8 times. And most of those were outside the arc. And on a couple of them, he drove in. The one toward the end, he got fouled on. The other one, he got tied up on a jump ball. But he really wasn't getting the ball in positions where he could do damage. The only touch of those that he got in the post was the one in the first possession of overtime that he, had the and one. But in general, he was getting the ball outside the arc and would either give it right back to somebody. He got the one baseline jump shot toward the end that I told you guys before. As I watched it back, I think it was designed to go to Al, and he kind of stepped in and didn't get to Al for the corner 3 and took that shot. So, part of that, you give credit to Florida State. Part of that is really trying to understand what IU can do differently to get him the ball in the post or clear out like they did on that play where he got fouled at the end, and just give him a chance to, drive on a guy who he had the advantage over athletically. So, I think that's what you look back at stuff like that and you lament just not getting the ball inside the 3-point line, even if it's not to Trace. There was just too many possessions down the stretch where the ball wasn't in a position to really put any pressure on Florida State's defense. And so, to me, you look back and say, hey, you make a play here and there. You don't settle for a 3. You don't drive into 3 guys. You don't, whatever the case may be. I think you can find a way to get him another touch in a position where he can put pressure on the defense and maybe you win the game. So that was really it in a nutshell for me. They'd fought back from being down and really played neck and neck for a while, and just both because of Florida State, and I think just maybe because of tiredness, got away from getting the ball to TJD as much as was needed at the time. Yeah,
I think you bring up something that's really important. Last night was a game of playmaking. And Indiana made enough to be there, but they didn't make enough to win. And Florida State was able to make some, including the last shot. There was a step back 3 that was contested by TJD. And it seemed like when Indiana had the few mistakes they made defensively, Florida State was able to capitalize. And on the other end, Indiana was not able to do that as much. At least I think 1 possession as much, which led to the final in overtime. Coach Adragna, you talked a little bit about being happy watching film, or a little bit more pleased watching film offensively. That's been a big struggle for all of us as we've watched. We see the defense being 12th in adjusted KenPom early, and those numbers need to filter out yet. But, the offense is up to 37th nationally, and most of us feel a little bit uneasy about the offense. And you mentioned in your film room, and if you haven't watched it, again, go watch it. I haven't had the opportunity yet, but I'm interested to see what you have to say there. But share with us some of the things that you saw in the offense that was pleasing in this Archie Miller era.
Yeah, it was the spacing. A lot of what we've seen in the Archie Miller era, part of it is personnel driven, having your best players and your best scorers be big men. It's sometimes tough to to create good spacing, especially last season. I think a lot about when Joey and Trace were both parked on both the blocks early on this season in Texas. In the Texas game, IU ran a set a lot where they'd run a high ball screen, but basically wherever the guard was going, there was a big man parked right on that block, and there was no driving lane for the guard to utilize. Last night, when IU had good spacing, and you'll see it in my film review, man, did they get good looks. It sounds so simple. They had good spacing, they got good looks, but it's not been a staple of what we've seen in the Archie Miller era. You've got 4 guys spaced around the perimeter. You've got a guy setting a high ball screen. I think a play that stands out in a lot of people's mind from yesterday's game was Race Thompson setting that ball screen, rolling to the basket, gets a beautiful bounce pass from Armand Franklin and jams it home. That play is probably not possible if Trace Jackson Davis is in the game because Jerome Hunter is lifting kind of in a roll replace action. And so he's the defender that's supposed to be guarding the roller is now lifting with Jerome Hunter, and it results in a dunk for Race Thompson. And you see it time and again. But then I also point out in my film room where there's times where IU just stands, and there's a time in particular. I think it's with 2 minutes left. Rob Finney is driving or has a driving lane, but Al had kicked out to him, and then Al just stood on the block. Al's guy ends up being the one that contests Rob's shot. So just little things that, again, I didn't really notice yesterday when I'm watching in live time. But today I watched them like, wow, they actually had a lot of 4-out, 1-in stuff that they ran, especially in their ball screen actions. And I was actually pleasantly surprised with how good their spacing was at certain times in the game.
Yeah, and spacing is important. And the thing that's interesting when they run that ball screen stuff is the guard has to draw 2. And if they don't draw 2, you need to drive to the lane. That's when that post player needs to stay weak side. But the post player going strong side is really good when the guard draws 2. So our guards have to draw 2. And the goal of that, which I think we're running some of this at our high school, and film's already out, so I'm not giving out any secrets, but we're trying to get 4-on-3 is what we're trying to get. And you need a guard who can really use that ball screen, and our guards need to be a little bit better at that. But that's that spacing. All of a sudden, if we have 4 offensive guys and 3 defensive players have to guard them, we're spaced out. And with the hit to the short roll or a kick to the wing, now we're playing 4-on-3, and the next pass gets us a good open look. Indiana's trying to do that. I like that. I like their ball screen stuff this year a lot more because of that. It's obviously a work in progress. So, Coach, do you agree with that on the ball screen? Is there anything new set-wise that they've done that you think is better this year offensively?
Yeah, I like a lot of the continuity action that they do in the ball screen stuff. A set they ran last night that I thought, it's something that was so simple, and you expect a Big Ten coach to scout very well. But what I really liked was from Archie is it's the first time I've ever seen him set kind of that double ball screen where the guard set the first screen and then Trace set the second one. They got the mismatch they wanted every time they ran it because Florida State was switching everything. And they really converted well. Now they only ran it a couple times, but I thought it spoke to Archie. Archie had a game plan. Hey, Florida State's switching everything. We're going to try to kind of beat them at their own game or utilize that to our strength. They do it every time, absolutely not. But I'm not saying Archie's some world beater because he scouts his opponents. Obviously, that's what he's expected to do. But I thought it spoke well of them having a game plan going into there and actually executing that game plan.
And what they did there is when you switch, you can get an advantage and attack, either throw it in the post on a switch, but they really attacked that 6'9" freshman, and he was still learning how to play Florida State defense. And a lot of the good offenses when they got him either guarding 2 and the post was open, or a switch where they could take advantage of it. Andy, coming to you, the ACC Big Ten, the Big Ten wins, I believe, 6-4, something like that. The ACC last night had some victories, but how does that play out in the long run as far as bracketology and the overall strength of the Big Ten, as we are really close to starting Big Ten play?
Well, it certainly helps. I think you look at one of the games that was most surprising to me was Penn State beating the doors off of Virginia Tech after Virginia Tech had looked pretty good. early in the season. I was surprised a bit by how much Illinois won by, but wasn't surprised at all that they went into Duke and won, particularly this year. Maybe with the crowd, maybe that's a little bit different, but I thought that was impressive. Iowa was pretty much what you'd expect Iowa to be. They kept North Carolina in the game with their lack of defense, but just knockdown shooters that would make any IU fan jealous, I think, at this point, just to watch those guys just freely let it go and feel like it's going in every time. So, I think the top end Big Ten teams performed really, really well. And you had a couple slip ups from teams a little bit lower in the conference, but I think the teams that are really going to be in contention for NCAA tournament bids for the most part acquitted themselves really well. And so that, as well as I do, that really carries a lot of weight, especially in an abbreviated non-conference season where you're not going to get a ton of those marquee games. So I thought the league overall looked pretty good. I think they're still behind the Big 12 in KenPom, but generally speaking, I don't think they did anything to really shoot themselves in the foot. Even you look at IU losing a game on the road in overtime against a really good team is not going to hurt your league from that standpoint. So I thought overall it was good.
Real rough draft of Delphi Bracketology, not to be published yet, has 9 Big Ten teams in, and a 10th one and the first 4 out just based on quality wins, no metrics or anything, just about the number of quality wins based off KenPom site. So the Big Ten's looking to be extremely tough, and again, that's the reason. Again, not being happy about the loss, but you go in and play a quality opponent, you're learning some lessons. They obviously learned some lessons from Texas. And Indiana's played the number 2, the number 4, and then the number 16 adjusted KenPom defense already this year. So they're not taking it easy, and they can learn lessons for a tough Big Ten. So coming up here on the Assembly Call Radio, it's time for an in-depth edition of Coach's Corner. You sent in a bunch of questions, both X's and O's and team management. We'll try to answer them from a coach's perspective. That's next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hey, this is Matt Spielfeld, Big Ten champ and Better Than Advertised Sixth Man of the Year in 2016. And speaking of Better Than Advertised, join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcast or watch those replays and see all the between segment banner, then check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms and the other coach, Tony Adranya. And we had a lot of great questions from our listeners today, and we're just going to simply get to those. A lot related to the offense, which is 37th in KenPom adjusted offense, and as Coach Adranya said, has started to have better spacing and some better sets, but is still the struggling issue for most of us fans with Indiana basketball. So Michael asked this: do you believe that our guard play is good enough to win against absolutely top-tier talent? If not, how do we try and scheme around our deficiencies in guard play, focusing more on the offensive side with these questions? I'll throw that to you, Andy, first. Overall talent level at our guard play, is it good enough to be in the top tier of the Big Ten?
You guys talked about this on the show a bit last night. I think Jared brought it up. Right now, you're inclined to say no. I mean, you look at the recruiting rankings and just what they're able to accomplish physically. It's a little bit of recency bias to evaluate that against a team that plays the way Florida State does. So that might be unfair. But I think if nothing else, you just look at it from a shooting standpoint. And you brought this up last night. At some point, you got to have guys that are consistently making wide open looks, because I do think offensively they're generating, not every possession certainly, but they're generating more of the kinds of looks that in modern college basketball you expect guys to hit. And so maybe it's just from that standpoint alone. I know the question is focused more on offense. I think defensively you really feel good about what you're getting out of guys like Armaan and Rob, but at some point you close off your options on the other end of the floor if you're not able to make open threes. So I guess I'm going to say no, it doesn't look like it right now. I think that's where unlocking Lander becomes really important, because I think he is a guy who, once he gets up to speed, can compete at that level. But that's my gut reaction to it based on what we've seen, so far and over the course of a few years for most of the guys getting the backcourt minutes right now.
Okay, so let's go on the premise that until Lander gets up to speed, these are good 4-year guards that are in a program. Those are those get old, stay old guards, but that you need to add talent to, and Lander could be that talent. Coach, I've always clamored that you need a downhill guy, a late shot clock, go get you a bucket guy, and everyone makes fun of my love for Ayu Dosunmu at Illinois, but how do you scheme? What kind of things do you do? Does this pick and roll offense allow for these guards who are good guards but maybe not great guards to create some offense, in your opinion?
Yeah, and it sounds so simple, but to scheme around guard efficiency, you got to put them in spots they're comfortable. For Finney, I think it's coming off ball screens with maybe a stop and pop. Al, it's driving in space, not highly trafficked areas. We've seen that he doesn't finish well in high traffic. Armaan, it's coming off a ball screen and maybe it's a mid-range jumper rather than the pop, or maybe a little floater. We've seen that kind of in his repertoire. And then for freshmen like Lander and Galloway, jury's still out, but it appears Lander wants to be a creator and Galloway is very much a slasher. So in terms of scheming, it sounds, again, so simple. Put them where they're comfortable and play to their strengths. But, at the end of the day, that's the answer. You got to find ways to get them in spots on the floor that they're comfortable doing what they're best at. And so I actually do think that Archie's done a pretty good job of that in terms of our guard play and getting them in comfortable spots in sets and things like that. But at the end of the day, like Andy said, and like you said, you're getting high level 4-star, 5-star guys, wide open looks in corner threes. You got to knock that down with some consistency. You're not going to beat anybody on any consistent basis.
Yeah. I'm going to piggyback on that comment about the coming off ball screen pull-up jumpers. I'd like to see more of that. Pull-up jumper is a lost art in the game, and a lot of strategy is you want a 3 or a layup, and I get that, and I understand that's where college basketball has come. But I think we have a couple guards that might be better at the 10 to 15-foot pull-up than maybe going in space. And that ball screen, if they're going to be heavy towards Race and towards Trayce Jackson-Davis, and their ball screen coverage is going to be more geared towards the big, and they're going to go either under or over, that's going to give those comfortable shots to those guards. If you're going to start going under, then the guard's got to sit back and hit that 3. But if they're going to go over and have a drop coverage, what I call the ball screen drop coverage, that elbow jumper is there. And we've talked a lot about Rob is a very good prober. He needs to be more aggressive to look for his shot, because when, he is aggressive, the ball seems to go in even from 3. Coach Miller needs to in some way try to unleash his confidence in that. And the players got to recognize their points of comfort too. Al driving into 3 people last night turns out to be a big play because it was a home run going the other way. And I know Coach Miller took, he took the fault for that, I think, in the post-game comments. But, there was an and one there to the corner. So you got to know that next pass. So scheme, I think this is a better scheme than what we've seen in the past. It's just now the execution. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I think I think it all ties together with what both of you guys are saying. You don't have a lot of great finishers at the rim of the guards. So at some point, I think Rob oftentimes looks like there was a play. I think it's actually the one Tony referenced where Al's guy is the one that contested his shot, but he kind of drove awkwardly and passed up what looked like a good 3 before he drove. And then he kind of drove and leaned in, almost trying to get fouled and doing whatever. And that's a challenge for him versus there was a couple possessions earlier. He had a nice elbow jumper where he kind of went in, stepped back a little bit, made a shot right from the elbow. So I do think it's that Armaan has shown that in the Stanford game, hit some good shots that way. So I think it's a combination of both the coach putting him in that position, but also not trying to force things and trying to get too much downhill and out of your comfort zone where you're not confident in your ability to finish. And you're also just thinking maybe I'm going to get fouled instead of, pulling up for something there. So I think it all ultimately ties together, because regardless of whether we think that they're, this is the kind of backcourt talent that you really need, I think they can be adequate if you're able to mask the deficiencies that they have, which Archie is well aware of at this point. I mean, with Alan and Rob, you've got guys who have been in the years for program for 3 and 4 years. You know what they can do and can't do. So I think I think you can hide that to a certain extent. And I think with Armand, you can do the same thing. He's still growing. You really like what you've seen from him taking a leap, and he's really done a tremendous job defensively, particularly last night on a much bigger guy. So there's building blocks there that you want to keep him on the floor. So I think that's ultimately the task that Archie's faced with, is continuing to try to evolve what they're doing offensively to be able to mask what they have and accentuate the aspects of what they do that are maybe above average compared to other guys.
We just need to tell Armand we're playing in Banker's Life every game and get his mentality, his confidence for that. Jeff asked, with as much as we struggle to hit shots from the outside, do we need to run more sets or screen actions to get shooters open? This might go a long way in getting them some confidence that coach is running a play for the player, and he doesn't see many being run. I'll ask Tony, do you remember? I don't know what game of the Maui Classic, but they came out in some continuous doubles. I don't know if you remember that. It was a staggered double, then a double pin, and rotating the guards through. So I'm sure that coach has some of those sets in his arsenal, but that was the first time I had seen that staggered double. In my opinion, you're going to run that for L more than anybody else right now, because I think Durham's the one who could get to 42% three. So if it is true that you want to run something for a 3-point shooter, that might not be a bad idea. Do you remember those double staggers, and what do you like about that or not like about that?
I do. I do remember those double staggers. I actually liked that set a lot. When I was at Southport, we ran something very similar that Coach Brand brought from his college that he was at previously. So I love the double stagger. But in terms of running actual sets for 3-point shooters, it's really hard to come off a screen and shoot. You're much more apt to have high percentage 3-point shooters at the college level off drive and kick, or guys spotting up. So I mean, essentially, it comes down to I use actually getting a lot of those spot up looks. So I mean, obviously, guys' confidence is shot, but I don't know that running a play for them, coming off a screen and having to get their feet set as they're coming off that screen and things like that really upset confidence any. I actually think it's a more difficult shot than the ones they're getting. So I don't necessarily think that it has to be a set thing to get IU going. But they definitely need to see a couple go in to get that confidence up. That's for sure.
So Coach Adron, you're showing your age, because the guy who asked this is my age, and we love that the motion offense, with Steve Alford coming off screens, and it's kind of hard for us old codgers to learn new tricks. But you're absolutely right. The game of basketball is dribble and kick, post feed, pass out of the double, and a step in three, catch and shoot three, more than it is a heel toe action of us old basketball dudes, and what we taught. It is just a different style. But I do think every once in a while for Durham, you might be able to run something to put him in position to get square on a catch and knock it down, just for confidence. I'm not necessarily clamoring. I've been happy with Indiana's offensive philosophy, not its execution. Right. And there's something else. I'm going to throw this to Andy, and there's a question I wanted to ask both of you. But Patrick asked, and we've kind of talked about this already a little bit, but if our guards attack off the dribble like this consistently, what does that do for our offense? I don't know if the nature of that question is positive or negative. At times you can dribble too much, but I do like the idea of dribbling downhill and attacking more perimeter oriented. Andy, any thoughts on that?
Well, I think ultimately, if they can do that effectively and show the ability to finish, you're drawing guys, you're opening things up for dump offs to a guy, guys like Trace or Race. You're opening yourselves up to those driving kick opportunities. The problem is you've got to, one, show the ability to finish around the rim to really do that, and two, guys have to knock down the shots that they get. I mean, I think goes back a little bit to the last question. I don't know that they're running sets to get a lot of that stuff, but there's reads to be made off of the plays that are there that are leaving guys open, and kind of go back to that and just beat it into the ground. Like there aren't a ton of possessions where they really get into something and run it. I think toward the game late last night, there were some struggles just, I think, with legs and really not getting into anything until too late in the shot clock. But in general, when they go and run stuff, they're getting reasonably good shots that you would be happy with in general out of the offense. It's not a ton of late shot clock. Somebody's got to come and try to bail them out trying to do something. So I do think it helps. It puts pressure on the defense. And I think having somebody who's really willing to turn the corner coming off of those ball screens becomes really important. And Armaan is a guy who's more likely to do that than Rob is right now, or at least seems more comfortable doing that in my estimation. So I think you have to do that to put pressure on the defense. Otherwise, you're just dribbling side to side and not really doing anything. And I watched a middle school game last night where there was a lot of side to side dribbling, and it was not great.
There are times where I'm sitting there going, come on, guys, we got to do something. They still made something out of it in that high ball screen. And I thought it got a little obviously a lot stagnant late. Coach, let's talk about shooting. What would we do? You and I suggest the shooting, because these guys have shown times where they're capable of hitting shots. And then you have a guy, we joke about Banker's Life and Armaan, but then Armaan has an air ball and plays a really good game other than his shots. Is it mental or physical, in your opinion, the shooting of the Indiana Hoosiers?
I mean, my gut says it's mental. You have to think that obviously confidence is shot right now. It's something in your head when every time you're going up for that shot, you're thinking about how you're 25% or something. To me, you'd have to think that it's mental. A lot of these guys are high level basketball players, and some of them were good shooters in high school. Now, granted, they're not playing Division I high caliber guys every night in high school, but at the end of the day, shooting the ball. Confidence is huge. I mean, it's the name of the game in basketball, and it can make or break you as a team. And from a shooting standpoint, it's been broken for quite some time for IU, but it's tough. I mean, it's tough to say. Like, there's nobody that just shoots a ball and I'm like, yikes, those mechanics are bad. Outside of, I don't think Galloway's are great, but mechanically, I don't see anything that's just like, man, there's no way that's going in.
The next question for all of us is, sometimes it's a good thing. You get what you emphasize as a coach. And I tell a lot of young coaches, make sure you know what you believe in, emphasize what you believe in, and you're going to get it. I mean, emphasize it in every drill and every practice. Do both of you think that sometimes, though, that can have a negative aspect too? Like if you're emphasizing touches for the post, if you're emphasizing, a shot selection at times, that leads to that mental hesitation. Like, I'm open for three, but we just got told we need to get the ball to, Trace hasn't had a touch for 2 or 3 minutes. And that slight second, I mean, I believe when you cross that black line, you got to be cocky and not listen to coaches. I mean, you listen to them in the timeout, but once you go back on that court, you don't listen to coaches. You just go out and play. And then you come in and take the yelling later. And I see this team as having extreme buy-in and trying to do what is emphasized. And at some points, it's really helped this team. But I think that it might hurt the shooting because they're just a little hesitant to say, am I sure that I want to, is this the shot we want, or is it supposed to go inside? Andy, we'll start with you, and then Coach, please follow up.
Yeah, I think it's a really tough question to answer. I think you can certainly draw that conclusion by listening to what the coach is saying and watching what you see on the floor and watching the results. And I think the other thing that's interesting is you listen to Trace's comments about that you brought up about, like, we're not the IU team of the last 10 years. So I think it's mental, not only in the sense of, the individual guys and their personal track record with things, but I think at a certain point, the weight of Archie Miller teams haven't shot the ball well at IU, you're probably kidding yourself if you think that these kids also aren't thinking about that to a certain extent. So I think you're right about what coaches emphasize, but I also don't know, especially with I'm going to say lack of depth to a certain extent. I don't think guys are playing looking over their shoulder saying, hey, if I take this shot, I'm going to get yanked, because you turn around, there's not a whole hell of a lot of guys that you're going to go put in for somebody, right? In a lot of these cases. So I think that part helps, but I do see what you're saying.
It's not a buzzer, you're out if you take a shot pressure. Yeah. It is, coach has sold us on this idea that Trace in the inside game, and so we're going to make sure we do it. And then by the time you decide to take a shot, your mechanics maybe. Coach, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the proof's in the pudding. Obviously, at this point, it's been long enough for us to see that obviously that plays a factor. I mean, you look at IU this season in terms of 3-point attempts to field goal attempts. I mean, almost 300th in the nation. So it not only do they not shoot it well, they don't shoot it often. Obviously it's part of the scheme in the game plan, but I do think there's some validity to what you're saying in terms of, kind of second guessing every time that you're shooting, not because you think that you're going out or coach is going to rip into you, but just, should I be taking this shot? Is this the best shot I can take for the team type deal? Every time you're firing that thing up.
I've had guys, I said this on the show before, I had to run in practice for not shooting.
Yep.
You are a best shooter. You need to shoot. And sometimes you just got to fight those personalities. And again, always your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. The greatest strength of this team might be togetherness and buy-in, but sometimes you need to be selfish and like, dude, I need to hit a three. I'm just going to jack this and I'm going to hit it. And that's kind of why I like Lander. I think Lander's not scared. No. Lander has to get fundamentally and better and stronger, but he's not scared.
I think within 5 seconds of his IU career, he fired up a shot.
Yeah, and you got to have some of those guys. Some of the best guys I've coached really didn't listen to me. And that's okay. You got to build trust in different ways. And maybe that's, again, a positive that they're trying to do the right things, but man, that shooting is, it needs to get better. We have some more questions coming up here, in our third segment. We have a football question. We'll either answer that on the show or in between segments. We got a lot more to talk about here on the Assembly Call. How much do we miss Joey Brunk? Stick with us here on the Assembly Call.
Hey, it's Romeo Langford. What's the only thing better than hitting a game winner to beat Wisconsin? Celebrate it with friends afterwards. Join Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
I'm the coach, Brian Tonsoni, here with Andy Bottoms and the other coach, Tony Andrania. Remember, you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send it out every week with an IU news roundup, even during the offseason, and after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. Just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. It's continuing now with our mailbag. All of these questions were submitted by our listeners via the private IU basketball discussion community, assemblycall.com /community. Also a few on Twitter. Richie, we kind of talked about at the rim scoring. We can address that a little bit later. But the first question that we're going to talk about comes from Tim. I've been vocal lately that the Hoosiers need Joey Brunk. They need his maturity, leadership, and ability to guard true centers and not allow pedestrian 7-footers to look like All-Americans. Our two losses, Texas and FSU, are similar in that they have large-bodied, mature men playing, and sometimes it feels like we're playing men against boys. While there's no denying Trace had 17 rebounds, it sure didn't feel like that many. Andy, Joey Brunk, what contributions would he make? I know that there's some questions about how healthy he is, so I don't know that there's any imminent return. But what do we miss without having Joey Brunk available?
Yeah, I do think there's an element of toughness that he brings there. And so I think being able to have another guy like that you give a few minutes to, especially against a team that's so deep. We talked about this a little bit between one of the breaks in terms of Jerome Hunter, where he's really your backup big, but in a game like Florida State where they've got so many big guys up front, that's not the best matchup for him on the defensive end. So I think he can help you there. The challenge becomes some of the spacing and things like that we've talked about in the offensive part of the show kind of get thrown out the window when you've got him. So it's a bit of give and take, but I do think there is, having some of that toughness and not letting yourself get bullied around a little bit is helpful. But I think the minutes that he can really give you become limited because of what that does on the other end. But never hurts to have another big body, that's for sure.
Coach, your thoughts on what Joey Brunk would provide?
Yeah, first of all, Joey's my guy. Coached him at Southport, so I love Joey. So, but yeah, Andy said it. He's he's a big body that obviously brings a lot of things, especially from a leadership standpoint. A guy that's seen it all. He's now in his 4th or 5th year of college. But in terms of basketball, on the offensive end, he does present a lot of challenges for IU because he's another guy that has to play in the paint, very akin to Trace and Race as well. So there's some challenges there. There's obviously some positives. I think he's a guy that really could come in with the second unit. You don't see a lot of drop-off, which is huge. I mean, the depth that you can get with a guy like that, especially as you grind through a Big Ten season, is vital. So obviously him being healthy helps the Hoosiers. I don't think he's a 30, 35-minute point per game guy or anything like that, or even as much as he saw last season. But I certainly think that a healthy Joey Brunk is a good thing for IU.
I think he hurts not having him offensively from the second unit. Having Trace, we love Trace playing 40 minutes, but maybe he's more efficient even at 32 and can go full out. And you have that, against length. What I like about Joey, he's got that old man game, that up and under, that swivel, that get under the arms action to score. And I think he could get you 6 to 10 points just from a backup because he's so efficient and he knows the moves and he knows how to get angles. That makes our second unit even better. And so I know that the spacing is true, but you could give TJD a rest and still play Hunter as a 4 or Race at the 4 and have the same spacing issues with TJD. And you have some offensive ability there with Joey. So that's my thought. Here's Tom says, why is Leo not seeing the floor and Lander very little? Leo is supposed to be the best three-point shooter in the state. Lander is supposed to be the fastest player going defense to offense. We need a change to inject some more offense into this team or in the middle of the pack. Coach, your thought on freshmen in college basketball. You've coached at the high school level, and you know what a transition that is. Talk about, these are obviously talented kids, and they've played some time, but the development, and then maybe specifically Leo and Lander, in your thoughts.
I mean, I think one thing we got to remember is that, we're really operating around like what a normal system or a normal team would see, like early November, mid-November, in terms of where they're at in terms of their college season. We got to also remember Lander is a guy that graduated as a junior in high school. It's early. Guys need to certainly have some patience with guys like Lander and Leo in terms of getting them up to speed. I think by the time March rolls around, we're probably seeing a completely different rotation in minutes distributed. But Archie's certainly bringing these guys around slowly, patiently, and quite honestly, college basketball is a lot different. It's just a much more physical game, and it's more physical. And also, you're not playing these cupcakes right off the bat like you would in normal years, where you're going right into the grind, and sometimes you got to rely on your experience there.
Yeah, sorry, I think my audio cut out for a little bit there. Andy, your thoughts on Leo and Lander getting minutes, and even maybe throw Geronimo in as freshmen?
Yeah. I think the Leo and Lander are pretty different scenarios in my view. Leo, while known as a shooter, seemed pretty reticent to shoot in some of the Maui games where he did see action and played a little bit. And I think you take what you see offense is trying to do to Trey Galloway on the defensive end, and you magnify that pretty big against Leo, where they're just going to go at him on the dribble. And with Lander, I do think they want to try to get him more minutes. I'm just not sure that last night was the time for it, given the personnel. But I think his minutes are going to continue to grow, and I think that's one where you're going to see his role really expand. I don't know that you will with Leo, other than some spot minutes here and there.
Yeah, I think the key to this season to reach the ceiling is getting Lander up to speed as fast as he can. I totally understand bringing him along slowly, especially, on the defensive end, which I do agree with Coach that he's getting better. But when he at his potential, Indiana's a lot better.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing most of the music you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again on Sunday after IU North Alabama. Thanks to Coach Adranya for joining.
Take it from me, Nick Zeisloft. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And as always, go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
All right. That is a wrap. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I don't know about Wi-Fi all the time and everything. I think Amy put something in the microwave because when I froze, I heard the microwave going upstairs. That might have just thrown some waves out of whack down here in the man cave.
You're good.
Hey, Coach, very good job on the show tonight. We appreciate you bringing your thoughts and expertise to the show. I think we answered
I enjoyed it.
Every question. There's one from Matt. If you're listening, how much pressure does the success of the IU football program, along with the media love for Coach Allen, add to Coach Miller this season? To me, from a coaching perspective, it probably shouldn't add pressure. You coach in your program, and you got your own things to worry about, and I think they get along very well. If it's truly 24 sports, one team, then there's not going to be a comparison. From a fan and media standpoint, though, everything's LEO and 6-1, and everyone's calling it a football school. There might be some. You might sit back in some downtimes in your basketball office and go, "Damn, man, this has got out of control fast." But I don't know. There's enough pressure on college basketball to recruit and do things that if you're good at your job, you don't let that come in, or you let it come in and you flush it real quick. Any thoughts, guys?
I just think they're such different. The two programs are such different animals that I don't know how comparable it is. I think there's a lot of pressure on Archie regardless, and I don't know that. I think heading into this season with expectations and kind of what the track record has been to this point, I'm not sure that anything really makes that any worse. I think in some ways you might be able to make the argument that it helps because it's something else people are getting excited about and giving attention to, as opposed to the other way around. So I don't know that it matters a great deal because there would be a ton of pressure on him, even if the football program was 1-6 as opposed to 6-1. There might be even more scrutiny because everybody's like, all right, well, now it's basketball season. What are you doing? What are you doing about it? So I don't know that there's too much of that. Interesting question, though. And whoever would have thought that it would get to that point where somebody would be asking whether the success of IU football is somehow an issue for the basketball team.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had written down for that question too. Was it's so different. I mean, it's almost like, is there pressure on the Pacers because the Colts are good type of scenario to me. I mean, obviously on a smaller scale than that, but they're just it's completely different. Yes, they're under the same athletic umbrella, but outside of that, there's so much pressure to win at IU that I don't think there's too many outside factors that really add to that.
Coach, while we have you here, we have some people stay on for After Dark. Would you like to just share your background, where you've coached, maybe a favorite story of yours coaching, and how you came to like Indiana basketball so much? You watch film and cut film all the time for Indiana.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is I played basketball at Southport High School here in Indianapolis for my sophomore through junior year. Or sophomore through senior year, I played on the varsity team at some level my sophomore year, I guess. But anyway, I played basketball. I knew I wanted to stay around basketball, so I went to IU. And at IU, went into sports broadcasting and was around the program a lot. And then as soon as I graduated college, I called up the head coach at Southport at the time was Kyle Simpson, who's back down at Bloomington South now as an assistant, and just said, "Ed, you need any help around the program?" He hired me at the middle school at the 7th grade job, and then I just kind of kept moving my way up through the middle school ranks, and I was the freshman coach. And then by the time I ended my career, or I guess my career is not ended as a coach, but it's on hold right now. I was a varsity assistant at Southport. But then this last year, my wife got pregnant with our first kid. My job kind of got more time consuming because I'm not a teacher. So I took a step back from coaching as of last season, which kind of looks like a blessing in disguise right now with where the world's at. But in terms of IU, I've grew up an IU fan, an hour north up in Indianapolis of the Hoosiers, and then went to IU. But like I said, my background was in sports communication. I love IU, and I love coaching. So the IU film room just kind of became a natural fit. It was a way to continue producing content that super enjoyable for me. So yeah, that's kind of my background, kind of my story and how IU film room came to be. It was just kind of a natural thing that grew to what it is now.
Excellent. And for, again, check out his work. It's iufilmroom.com, correct?
Yes.
That's
yep.
correct.
Yep.
And it's good stuff. You always can pick up some stuff like he said after watching film and doing anything. Andy, how are things your way? Any update for the chat mob?
No, the fourth grade basketball team's coming together.
Very
we're
good.
Getting there. We got uniforms now, so we're official at least. But no, we don't have any games till January. So we've just been doing 2 nights of practice and 1 night of skills and drills a week. So it's been fun to get back out there. And it's kind of funny, the skills and drills we do, it's like the third and the fourth grader combined. So it's kind of funny to watch some of the third graders now and think that most of the girls that I have this year were that, and just kind of look at them side by side to them and see how much they've improved on different things. So it's been fun. I get some bad habits out of a couple of them who got our coach kind of scared out of shooting. So to kind of go back to what you emphasize and different things like that. I got this one girl like last night at practice. She got the ball like on the post and turned and like dribble the other way. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm never going to get mad if you take that shot. I go, but if you dribble the other way, I was like, that's not what we need. Like everything we're doing is trying to get the ball right where you just got the ball. So take your shot. I go, you can miss every shot you take on there. I don't care if you shoot it over the backboard. I said, but do not turn away from the shot that you just had. So it's kind of working through that with some of them. And then, others are definitely have a quicker trigger from shooting that we need to rein in the other direction. But it's been fun to get out there a few hours a week and
good deal. I had the opportunity to coach against my son. He's
I saw that.
22 years old and got the JV job at Rossville High School, and they played Western. So I was on the bench trying to watch him, and this is what classy guy my head coach is. He was my assistant. Now I'm his assistant. He told me, he goes, your job during this JV game is to watch your son coach. I thought that was a pretty classy move. That was his first game ever, his debut, and gosh darn it, he won. His Rossville JV beat our Western JV, and then in the varsity game there was a breakaway, and one of his kids fouled our kids hard, and I kind of yelled down at him that was his little coaching, scream and yell, and I said, that's how you get guys hurt. And I don't think he heard me. There was enough people in the stands that he didn't hear me, but we made eye contact a couple times, and it was not family love. It was, we wanted to beat each other bad, and then we hugged afterwards. So it was a very, 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 very cool moment. I'm very, very proud, and he's off to a good start. He's 3-1 as a JV coach and learning on the way, and it's nice to see you young guys like Coach Adranya and my son Brent get in the profession, and it's just awesome to try to share those things.
Yeah, I saw Amy posted about that it went about as well as it could for her, really, that you both came home.
Yeah, the varsity won in overtime.
You both came home relatively happy when it was all said and done.
So we both got a win, and then we could enjoy the pizza in the dining room afterwards, Yeah. He was going to get kicked out for a night, rent or no rent. All right. Well, Tony, keep up the good work, and I'm sure Jared will be in touch. Again, we're always looking for contributors and stuff, and I'm going to get in contact with you too. I like some of the stuff. I need to get the ability to draw on my videos in the community, the editing that I do, but be interested to see how you put some of that together. But keep doing that. Thanks for all the questions, everyone. Have a very, very safe weekend, and as we head into the holidays, be safe. This community means a lot to a lot of people. In a time where we're isolated and maybe can't see family, we can get together on this Zoom call and YouTube and try to get us through this crazy time. And I appreciate every single person who listens to this old codger talk nonsense. It means the world. It's something I look forward to, and let's just keep being there for each other, and we'll get through it. Andy,
Yep,
take
absolutely.
care. Say Jen and the girls say hello.
Yeah, will do. You say the same to Amy and Tony. Thanks a lot for coming on. Enjoy.
Yeah.
This is the first Christmas for you guys with your little guy, right?
It is. Yeah.
Awesome.
Super excited.
Awesome.
I'm sure he's not going to be spoiled at all. So by
Not at
you,
all.
your family, anybody else. So we'll enjoy it. And
Yeah,
thanks for
thanks
coming
so
on.
much,
Really enjoy
guys.
your work.
All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Take
All right,
care.
Thanks, everybody. Later.